I thought this morning I would talk about, briefly, talk about 4 different topics. Kind of changing demographics and what that means, the increasing need for data, what that means, increasing competition and the move to partnerships, and then finally a little bit more on national scope in terms of where higher ed sees itself situated within both the current political climate, but just also, I think, as an industry, where they currently feel they're at. In terms of demographics and the tri-state region, not a big surprise that high school graduation is on the decline in the Midwest. I was actually a little bit on the uptick for the next 8 to 9 years, but Illinois is going down, and since they're the larger of the population, Wisconsin is staying stagnant. We're overall as a tri-state going down. And then you look at who is graduating within the declining population, and it's increasing students of color, Hispanic students, African American students. And what does that mean for post-secondary? By and large, it means we need to be much more responsive to first-generation students. We need to be more responsive to the infrastructure for students of color. And historically, not necessarily speaking specifically to Dubuque, but students of color and the achievement gap has gotten bigger. So if you've got more students graduating from high school with less capacity, it's going to influence not only higher education, it's going to influence all of the other industries. So how do we respond to that? Well, you have to respond to who your constituencies are. So what happens pedagogically, what happens within the classroom, what happens in terms of the coursework that you are offering, because higher education is getting more expensive. You can't simply say, well, you need to be here longer. You have to adapt and adjust to what you're doing in the classroom. One of the examples I think that's worth sharing in terms of how Loras is responding, historically we've been an institution that has about 25% first-generation students. We're increasingly seeing a need to be more responsive to first-gen students. So in 2017, we'll have a first-generation scholars program, and that'll support students both financially, academically, socially, and communally through mentoring, through creating an internal community. In the past, you kind of bumped into those people. You found them through conversation, but you're not wearing a sign that says, I really don't understand this place. Can someone help me? So we feel that it'll be a stronger capacity for us as an institution to create an infrastructure that not only helps first-gen students, but as soon as you point out kind of those invisible barriers, you begin to help other students. You begin to help the climate as a whole to be more responsive to where student needs are. In terms of data, it's not going to come as any surprise to anyone in the room that all of us are making much more data-informed decisions. The challenge, I think, is with all of the data that's being collected on us individually and our kids and everything that we do, who's using it and how are they using it? Or is it being used in ethical ways? Are we even asking ourselves those questions? And more importantly, from an employer standpoint, do my new employees and my current employees know how to analyze the data? It used to be that you could have that pocket in your industry and they were off on the 3rd floor and they ran all that. And now every job, there's an expectation that there is a savviness to how to use data, to how to make informed decisions with the data, to know what data to look at, how to sort through just all of the information that's now available to us. And I think the response in higher ed, certainly on the part of Loras, is to integrate data analytics and data savviness into many more majors. So certainly you've got your computer science and you've got your data science programs, and we've got an MBA in analytics. But we also now have a 3-2 program where you can major in almost any major and then add on the analytics component within 2 years. So it's increasingly a need. I don't think Loras is unique in this, but I do think we're a demonstration of how to be responsive to the need that's out there. there. Decreasing application pool of traditional age students, increasing competition with data lends itself to how are you going to respond in the industry. And I think you'll see more and more partnerships, both within higher education. So again, an example, the 6 Catholic colleges in Iowa have come together to create a more consortial association to better leverage services for our institutions, but also to look at where are we redundant, where are we complementing one another, and how are we better serving students and constituencies within the state and beyond, because it's too competitive to be redundant. It's too competitive to say, well, you know, we've got our corner of the state and you've got your corner of the state, and we really are okay that way. We'll also, as has been the trend easily for the last 20 years, but I think increasing because of competition, more and more partnerships, more public-private partnerships, more conversations that are more open about how needs and demands can come together to serve a particular goal. Maybe more on that in a moment. Shifting to where higher education currently sees itself, and it's hard to talk about higher education as an industry. We're not monolithic by any means, not in the state of Iowa, not across the country. But if you look at an organization like National Campus Compact, which is an organization of college presidents, over 400 within the states, and they look at the civic role that higher education plays, they've been around for 20-some plus years, and by and large, there's been ebb and flow to how much the focus has been on the institution and how we amp up our civic engagement within an institution. How do we work with our communities? How do we work with the particular concerns and issues of our place geographically? And I think not simply because of the current political climate, but increasingly, higher education recognizes the voice that they are compelled to have as a whole. Historically, colleges and universities started as a pursuer of the common good, working with communities to meet needs, to be the voice for the marginalized, and to look for where the needs were and to leverage resources in order to meet those needs. Then for lots of years it was, well, we've got to take care of our own house and we've got our own concerns to worry about. And I think we'll see, and again, sort of serendipitously at this point because it was already in motion, but Iowa Campus Compact just this week came out with their presidents all signing on to a statement of civic action statements in terms of how will we, as institutions of higher education, work toward pursuing the common and public good. How will we work in partnership with our communities to address and identify the needs, particularly those that are much more intractable. So working on issues of poverty, of inequality. You know, I think we thought our institutions could maybe address those things more independently, and it's not working. We are able to do it in pockets, much as you speak about the different neighborhoods. There are institutions that have incredible missions and capacity and histories of doing that. But holistically, we've not seen a lot of change. We've not seen a lot of change with the achievement gap across race and ethnic groups in K-12. We've seen some, and that's positive, and higher education's been a player in that. But really, with the resources we have in this country, we should be able to eradicate it. And I think higher ed is now coming into the knowledge that no one else is going to do it. You got to stand for what you believe in and then work and be a leader in having that conversation and then putting your resources behind the conversation to move it forward. From my perspective, that's very, very persuasive and positive. It's not an overnight thing. It's not a, oh, we'll get this done by 2018 and move on to the next challenge. But I think there's an increasing call for relevance, both because of the strong competition and the declining traditional age student, but also because our communities are demanding it. Higher education tuition, it's expensive, and it's not just what's the return on investment for the individual that's paying that, but what's the return on investment for our communities, what's the return on investment for our companies, for employers, and how do we make that much more transparent?